Hello and welcome to this special report here at XM.com. French President Macron has just decided to call a snap election to be held at the end of June, which could potentially be a huge gamble. What will this political risk mean for the euro and financial markets? I'm Maria Pachordiz, and joining me is lead investment analyst Rafi Boyajian. So Rafi, in the previous legislative elections in 2022, Macron lost his parliamentary majority. Can you tell us briefly what has happened this year regarding the European Parliament election results and how Macron's decision to call a snap election may put France in danger of facing political turmoil?
Well, Maria, so we just had, of course, those results coming through. And as had been pretty much been predicted by many, the far-right parties did make substantial gains across Europe, so they did increase their share in the European Parliament. However, if you look at the overall picture, what we ended up with is that centrist parties, both center-right and center-left, they managed to hold on to their majority. So you could say that, okay, not so bad. So, the moderate parties still pretty much they control what's happening to European policies. But there's been, of course, ripple effects on national levels. We did get the Belgian Prime Minister being forced to resign. But specifically, what shook the markets is, what happened in France, because Macron's party, or the coalition led by Macron's party, did come a very distant second. So they got less than the votes that the far-right party led by Marine Le Pen received. So this prompted Emmanuel Macron to call a snap legislative election in France. And this is something that took pretty much everybody, the entire political spectrum completely off guard, including members of his own party. And the reason for that is because, there really wasn't any need to call a snap general election right now. And Macron is hoping that in doing so, maybe he's going to receive a stronger mandate by voters, or at the very least, voters will let the government or the president know, whether they're leaning more towards the far right, who they want to govern the country. But of course, it could backfire. As you said, in the last legislative elections 2 years ago, Macron did lose his majority. Now, the Assemble Alliance is basically a minority government relying on votes from other parties to pass through legislation. So there's a risk that if this backfires, the far right, even if the National Rally Party doesn't gain enough seats, they could potentially form a coalition with another smaller far right party, which, by the way, together those two parties did receive almost 37% of the votes in the European elections. So there's a real risk of far-right government being formed in France from this snap election. So big gamble for Macron, and it's a risk for the euro as well, because of course the implications this could have for closer European integration, and that's why we saw, of course, that market reaction in the aftermath.
So beyond this election, are there any other immediate risks for the euro, and how might it react going forward?
Well, Maria, another reason why markets are probably kind of nervous right now is because there's a possibility of a snap general election being called in Germany too, because the coalition there has been under strain for some time, and the Social Democrats, which are the main party in that coalition, they came third in the European elections. The Greens also didn't do that well either. So we can't rule out that possibility. And even without a change in the German government, if you look at where things have stood in recent years, for example, Macron doesn't have the best of relations with the current German chancellor. So, maybe a change might not be such a bad thing after all, but this does, of course, add to the uncertainty, and political uncertainty is never so good for the currency. And in France specifically, we've seen quite a bit of a sell-off in the stock market there because should we get a far-right government, it might lead to perhaps more regulation or more interventionist policies. So, there are, quite significant risks. And then adding to all that is the fact that Europe now has to elect a new European Commission president. So the debate will start soon on whether or not to reappoint Ursula von der Leyen as president or to pick someone else. So it's looking like it's probably going to be quite a bumpy ride for the euro this summer.
Rafi, thanks so much. And thanks for joining us for this special report here at XM.com.